Hey Brainiacs, how you guys doing today? I am Cam's Brain, and I'd like to thank you for tuning in to another episode of My Humble Opinion. If you guys are new here, what I do, or at least for this series, is break down a book called The 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. We talk about this every Sunday at 8 p.m. on my channel. Today is no exception. We're going to be talking about the 20th Law of Power, which is do not commit to anyone. Now, as I always say when we talk about this book, a lot of people feel like this is a book of manipulation. In some regard, I can agree to that, and sometimes I can't agree with that. I think at the end of the day, even if this is a book of manipulation, it's very, very important that you are aware of what other people are reading, because they can use this in their everyday life against you. Now, like I said, for me, I don't think this particular, technically, I do think this particular statement is somewhat manipulative. It speaks to the basis of being very careful who you decide to agree with, and that's kind of how I interpret it. At the end of the day, sometimes you don't want to commit to what another person may say or what another person may do, because it puts you in the same position as them or in the same box as them. So you have to be very careful basically who you co-sign, because you could be co-signing somebody who doesn't necessarily always know what they're talking about. So while you agree with them on one particular thing, it doesn't mean that you're going to agree with them on a whole bunch of different things. So sometimes it's really good to just kind of stay to yourself. Now, as I always do, I try to break this down in 3 different ways. Try to figure out how this can help us in a business sense, in a relationship situation, and spiritually. Like I said, at the end of the day, I think this technically is somewhat of a manipulative statement if you take it negatively. If I put a positive spin on this, at the end of the day, it's basically saying being very mindful of who you allow yourself to agree with and what you represent. If I take a positive spin on it, that's what this looks like for me. So if I give you a good example, so in business, the reality of the situation is, if I have a company, right, and I know that I have to deal with another company that has something very, very close to what I'm doing, I'm not going to necessarily agree with everything that this company says about the product. I may feel like the product can do something a little bit better, or it may not do as good as the other company says. So I may, as a business, have to keep myself apart and not agree with what the other company says about the product that I'm deciding to sell to the consumer or to whoever it is I'm trying to sell to. Or even in business, when you find yourself dealing with a customer, right, and they want you to commit to doing something within a certain time frame. I know for me, a lot of times when I had a lot of businesses, I would tell somebody, hey, this is going to be done on Sunday, and they'll go, oh, well, we really need it by Wednesday. And me trying to appease my customer, I go ahead and I say, oh, okay, we'll go ahead and get it done when you want to get it done, even though I know at the end of the day it's going to stress me out. It may not get done, but I'm going to try. I had to learn to not commit to certain things. One, because it creates toxicity for me, for my employees. 2, it bogs me down, puts me in a position where I'm not 100% with other customers, because I'm trying to handle and take care of and make one customer happy. So those are a few things in business where you have to remember very, very quickly not to commit. There's usually a saying that a lot of people say, which is undersell and over deliver. I think that kind of goes in with this parable or with this law of power. Sometimes not committing is key. Same thing with sometimes you have to know when to say no. It's all the same thing if you look at it from a positive standpoint. Now, obviously, the concept of this is for you not to ever commit to anything so that you kind of look conspicuous and people kind of draw to you because you have less to say, or because you have a mystique about yourself, a mysteriousness about yourself. And some people may do that, but for me, I look at it in a sense of knowing when to say no. I look at it in a sense of underselling and over delivering, and I also look at it in a sense of self-care and knowing what I'm capable of, knowing my standards, knowing my limits. And it's the same thing in a relationship. If I look at it in a positive sense, sometimes you have to know what you can't commit to. If your significant other, if your friend or whoever it is you hanging with wants you to do a certain thing, wants you to go out and drink when you know you got to go to work the next day, or wants you to go to this party when you know you have to study for a test, don't commit to that. Know when to say no, and know that you can't always commit to everything at all, especially if you're dealing with somebody who's going to take you out of your comfort zone. A lot of life is knowing your standards, knowing your limits, and knowing your boundaries. So for me, like I said, I look at this in a sense of knowing when to say no, knowing who I am as an individual, and knowing what I will or what I won't accept in any type of situation. And the same thing spiritually. At the end of the day, don't commit to doing something. Don't promise the higher power that you believe in. If they bless you, then you're going to do all these granular things that you know you necessarily may want to do but have no intentions on doing, or may not even have the capacity to do. When I was younger, I used to do it all the time. I'll go, Lord, if you get me out of this situation, I'm going to go to church every Sunday. I'm going to do this, that, and the third. But in the reality, I know I'm not going to necessarily get to be able to do everything that I've promised if I get this blessing that I'm praying for. So at the end of the day, it's the same thing in a spiritual sense. Be careful when you do things like that, because at the end of the day, the higher power you believe in will test you. And the person you're in a relationship with will test you. And your customers will test you. People will push your limit, period. It doesn't matter if they're doing it purposely or vicariously, or if they're just doing it haphazardly. Like, people will test you. And if you don't know your limit, you don't know who you are, and you don't know what you're capable of, you'll find yourself in a world of hurt, and you'll find yourself apologizing for a lot of things that you didn't have to apologize for if you just stuck to your guns. You'll find yourself having a far better relationship with your friends, family, and the people that you have relationships with romantically. And also, same thing in business. You'll find yourself having bigger and better business the more and more you realize sometimes you have to say no in order to be successful. But I want you guys to leave your comments down below. Let me know if you agree with what I'm saying. Let me know if you think all this is just something that you don't agree with. If you have a situation that you remember that this kind of relates to, leave your comments down below. Let's all get involved. Let me know what you think about it. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. I am Cam's Brain, and thank you again for tuning in to another episode of My Humble Opinion. I will see you next time. Peace.
All work, no pleasure.